Cancer. Let's begin with the word itself because everything depends on how you hold it. Miracle. You've probably been taught to think of a miracle as something that breaks the rules of reality, a sudden, impossible event that arrives from nowhere and defies all explanation. But that's not quite what a miracle is, and it's certainly not what I sense approaching you. A miracle, in the truest sense, is the arrival of something you had quietly stopped believing was possible for you specifically. It doesn't have to break the laws of the world. It only has to break the private law you'd written in your own heart, the one that said this kind of love happens for others, but somehow never quite reaches you. That law is the thing about to be broken. So consider what it means to expect such a thing, because expectation is trickier than it sounds. To expect a miracle is not to stand with your arms crossed, demanding proof, testing every sign for authenticity. Nor is it to clench your fists around a specific outcome and refuse to breathe until it arrives exactly as you pictured. To expect a miracle in the way that actually invites one is to live in a state of soft readiness, to keep a light on in the window, to leave a door unlocked, to move through your days with the quiet assumption that something good is making its way toward you. That posture, that open and unhurried expectancy, is itself part of what draws the miracle near. Now let me start taking apart the heart of what you've been told. This promise that someone is going to love you more than anyone else ever has. Because the first thing to do with that phrase is to strip away the shallow reading of it, the one your mind might jump to. Being loved more doesn't mean being loved louder. It isn't about grander gestures or more dramatic declarations or a bigger show of feeling. Those things can be present, but they aren't the substance. Plenty of people have been loved loudly and shallowly, showered with performance while starving for something real. The more that's coming to you is a different kind of more entirely, and I want to spend our time together unfolding exactly what it consists of. The first dimension of that more is depth, and depth is nearly the opposite of drama. A deep love is quiet. In the way that deep water is quiet, it doesn't need to make noise to prove how much of it there is. What I sense approaching you is a love that runs far down, past the surface attraction that fades, past the initial excitement that all connections have, into the substratum where real attachment lives. This is the kind of love that doesn't evaporate when the novelty wears off, because it was never built on novelty in the first place. It was built on something sturdier, and sturdy things don't drain away. You're going to be loved at a depth that previous loves never reached, and depth is the first meaning of more. Notice how the words and the actions line up, because that alignment is one of the surest marks of the real thing. So much confusion in love grows in the gap between what someone says and what they do. Sweet words unbacked by behavior, promises that quietly dissolve, a warmth in speech that never shows up in reality. This person will be different. What they say and what they do will match, so that you're never left trying to work out which one to believe. The piece of that consistency is hard to overstate. You'll be able to simply trust what you're told because it will be confirmed again and again by what's actually done. And a love you can take at its word is a love you can finally rest your full weight against. The second dimension is constancy. And this one may matter to you most of all if you've known love that ran hot and cold. So many people have been loved in bursts, flooded with affection one moment and left in confusing silence the next, made to feel adored and then abandoned in an exhausting cycle that keeps the heart perpetually off balance. That is not what approaches you. The love I sense is steady, the kind that shows up the same way on the ordinary days as on the special ones, that doesn't withdraw the moment things get complicated. To be loved more, in this sense, is to be loved consistently, to finally be able to relax because you're not bracing for the affection to be suddenly yanked away. Constancy is a form of more that the anxious heart recognizes instantly as the thing it always wanted. I want to name the relief of a particular question finally answered because I sense you've carried an anxious one through past connections. Do they really want me? That constant low uncertainty, that need for reassurance that never quite settled, that background hum of insecurity about where you stood, it's exhausting, and it quietly robs love of its peace. What approaches you puts that question to rest for good. This person's steadiness and plainness will leave you in no real doubt about being wanted. And when a question like that stops needing to be asked, an enormous amount of energy is freed. Energy that was going into anxious monitoring can finally go into simply enjoying the thing. You get to stop auditing the love and start living inside it. The third dimension is being truly seen. And this is where the more than anyone else becomes almost startling. This person is going to perceive things about you that others walked right past. The particular way your mind works. The specific tenderness you hide under whatever face you show the world. The dreams you've half abandoned. The parts of yourself you've stopped showing because no one seemed to notice them anyway. What I sense is someone with the attention and the care to actually see you, not a convenient version of you, not a simplified sketch, but the real and complicated whole. And there is no love more nourishing than the love of someone who sees you accurately and stays. To be seen like that is to be loved more, because most people are only ever loved for the parts of themselves they let show. Let me name the openness this person brings, because emotional availability is far rarer than it ought to be. Many people love with a closed door, withholding their inner world, letting you only so far in before the guard comes back up. This person, I sense, is willing to be genuinely open with you, to share what they feel, to let you into the private rooms of who they are, to be vulnerable rather than defended. There's an intimacy in that mutual openness that surface connections never reach. The intimacy of two people who have each decided independently to stop hiding and who finally get to meet each other without armor. You won't have to guess at this person's heart or decode their silences. They'll let themselves be known, which is its own quiet form of devotion. The fourth dimension of that greater love is acceptance. And here I mean something specific. There are places in you that previous loves flinched away from, a difficulty, a wound, a complexity, a part of your history or your nature that made others pull back or ask you to be different. This person is going to love you in exactly those places. Not despite them in that grudging way people mean when they say they'll tolerate your flaws, but with a genuine acceptance that doesn't require you to hide or shrink. To be loved more is to be loved in the very spots where you've been loved less. To find that the things you feared made you unlovable are met instead with warmth. That experience can be almost disorienting the first time. And it's one of the truest signs of the real thing. There's an encouraging quality to this love that will lift you in ways you might not anticipate. This person will believe in you sometimes, in your lower moments, more than you manage to believe in yourself. They'll speak well of your potential, champion the dreams you've been half afraid to say out loud, stand behind your becoming instead of quietly doubting it. This is one of the underrated gifts of a great love. It doesn't only feel good in the moment, it actually helps you grow, because being genuinely believed in is among the most powerful forces for growth a person can encounter. Part of who you become in the coming season, you'll become on the strength of someone's steady faith in you, a faith that sees what you're capable of, even on the days you can't quite see it yourself. This is the kind of recognition that Sarah Angel Tarot most hopes to help you arrive at the understanding that the love you've been waiting for isn't a bigger version of the love that hurt you, but a fundamentally different kind. One that meets you where the others couldn't reach. Because so often we imagine that what we want is simply more of what we've already had, when what we actually need is something of a completely different quality. And the reading I'm sensing for you points not toward a louder echo of the past, but toward a genuine departure from it. The fifth dimension is prioritization, and this one heals a very specific wound. Many people have known the particular ache of being someone's afterthought, of being fit into the leftover spaces of another person's life, squeezed in around everything they considered more important, never quite made central. What approaches you is the opposite of that. This person is going to place you near the center of things, to arrange their life in a way that has room for you at its heart rather than at its edges. To be loved more is to be prioritized, to finally be someone's genuine priority rather than their convenience. And if you've spent time feeling like an option, the experience of being chosen first, deliberately and consistently, will feel like coming in from a cold you'd grown so used to you'd forgotten it was cold. There's an active quality to how this love is arriving, and I want you to feel it because you may be far too used to being the one who does all the reaching. In past connections, perhaps you were always the pursuer, the one putting in the effort, the one crossing the distance while the other person stood still and let themselves be loved. That imbalance is reversing. This time, someone is coming toward you, reaching in your direction, doing the work of closing the space, choosing to move rather than waiting to be moved toward. After a long season of being the one who tried hardest, the simple experience of feeling effort flow in your direction will land like a relief you didn't know you were allowed to have. The sixth dimension is understanding, which is different from being seen, though the two are cousins. To be seen is to be perceived. To be understood is to be gotten. This person is going to understand you, your reactions, your needs, the reasons behind the things you do that others found puzzling or difficult. There's a particular relief in being with someone who doesn't constantly misread you, who doesn't take your quiet as coldness or your intensity as too much, who grasps the logic of your inner world, even when it wouldn't make sense to a stranger. To be loved more is to be loved by someone who understands you, because understanding removes the exhausting labor of constantly explaining and defending yourself. You'll get to simply be known, which is one of the deepest forms of rest. If you've ever been someone's secret, this next dimension will reach a very specific wound. Some people keep their affection for you concealed, unwilling to claim you openly, treating the connection as something to be tucked out of sight rather than shown. What approaches you is the opposite of hidden. This person will be glad to be associated with you, unafraid to have you at their side, happy to let the world see plainly what you've come to mean to them. There is a particular healing in being openly claimed after a time of being quietly hidden, the feeling of stepping out of the shadows and into a warm and unashamed light, where you are not a secret to be managed, but a presence to be proud of. The seventh dimension is safety, and I want to dwell here because it may be the one you need most. Some loves cost you your peace. They keep you anxious, walking on eggshells, uncertain of where you stand, paying for the affection with a constant low hum of dread. That is a kind of love, but it is a taxing one, and it is not what's coming to you. The love I sense carries safety in it, the sense that you can relax fully, that you won't be punished for honesty, that you can bring your whole unguarded self without fear of it being used against you. To be loved more is to be loved safely, to finally exhale in the presence of another person. And if you've only known love that kept you tense, the experience of love that lets you rest will feel like a miracle in the plainest sense of the word. Let me tell you how this person will handle the moments of friction that every real connection contains, because the truth of a love shows most clearly in how it moves through conflict. Some people wound in disagreement, reaching for your softest places, turning a small rupture into a lasting scar. This person will do the opposite. When friction comes, as it inevitably does between two real people, their instinct will be to repair rather than to damage, to mend rather than to win. What makes a love durable isn't the absence of disagreement, it's the presence of someone whose reflex, even in a hard moment, is to protect the bond rather than their own pride. You'll be safe to disagree, which is a rarer safety than most people ever get to know. The eighth dimension is devotion, by which I mean the willingness to show up in action rather than only in word. Talk is easy and cheap and abundant. Devotion is the love that translates itself into deeds. This person is going to demonstrate their feeling through what they do, through the reliability of their presence, the follow through on their promises, the small, consistent acts that add up to a life of being cared for. To be loved more is to be loved actively, by someone who doesn't just tell you they care, but shows it in the texture of ordinary days. And there is something deeply reassuring about a love you can lean your weight against. One that holds because it's built of action and not merely of sentiment. Watch for the small things, because this is where a great love actually lives. Grand gestures make for good stories, but it's the tiny daily attentions that reveal the real texture of someone's care, the remembering of a small detail you mentioned only once, The thoughtful act done without being asked for. The little ways a person threads consideration through the fabric of ordinary hours. What approaches you is rich in exactly this kind of attentiveness. And you may find that it's these quiet, unremarkable acts of thoughtfulness gathered up over time that make you feel most deeply cherished, even more than the occasional sweeping gesture, because they prove that you're being thought of, not just in the big moments, but in the countless small ones too. The ninth dimension is delight, and this one is pure sweetness. There's a difference between being tolerated and being enjoyed, between someone putting up with you and someone actually taking pleasure in your company. What I sense approaching is a love that delights in you, that finds you a joy to be around, that lights up at your presence, that considers time with you a gift rather than an obligation. To be loved more is to be a source of happiness to someone, to watch their face brighten when you walk into a room. If you've ever felt like a burden, like something others endured rather than relished, this dimension will land especially deep. You're going to be enjoyed, delighted in, treasured for the simple fact of being yourself. There's a dimension of loyalty in what approaches you that deserves its own light, especially if you've ever known the particular ache of a divided heart. Some people love you while keeping one eye elsewhere, hedging, never quite committing their whole attention to you. What I sense is single-hearted, a love that points fully in your direction, without a wandering gaze, without you having to compete for a place you should never have had to compete for. There is a deep and specific peace in that kind of undivided focus. The peace of no longer wondering whether you're truly the one or merely one of several. You are the one, wholly and without rival, and you'll feel the difference the way you feel solid ground after a long stretch on shifting sand. Now let me turn the deconstruction in a direction you might not expect, because the miracle isn't only about what this person will do. It's also about what's happening in you. Part of what makes this love possible is that your own capacity to receive it has been expanding. It's a strange truth that many people can't actually take in the love that's offered to them. They deflect it, distrust it, sabotage it, because some old part of them doesn't believe they deserve it. And so love that arrives finds no place to land. But I sense that in you, the ground is being prepared. You're becoming more able to believe in your own lovability, which means that when this love comes, you'll be able to actually receive it rather than push it away. The miracle is partly the love arriving and partly you being finally ready to hold it. Let me address the loves that fell short before, because I don't want you to carry their failure as your fault. If previous connections didn't rise to this level, it wasn't because you were unworthy of more. Often it was simply that those people lacked the capacity to love at the depth you needed. They were at a different stage, carrying their own limitations, unable to give what wasn't yet in them to give. Their inability to love you fully was a fact about them, not a verdict about you. This is worth sitting with, because so many people conclude from a series of disappointments that they must be the problem, when really they were just offering a depth of heart to people who couldn't match it. The match, not the merit, was what was missing. And the match is what's coming. There's a reason this person is capable of loving you at this level, and it has to do with what they've lived through. Depth of love usually comes from depth of experience. People become able to love greatly after they've suffered, lost, grown, and learned what actually matters. The person approaching you has, I sense, been shaped by their own journey into someone with the capacity for real devotion. They didn't arrive at this readiness by accident. They earned it, the way we all earn our depths, through living. And that means what they bring to you isn't the shallow love of someone untested, but the seasoned love of someone who knows from experience how rare and precious a genuine connection is. They'll value you the way only someone who has known the lack of such a thing can value it. Let me draw out the meaning hidden in that crown you might imagine, hovering over this whole idea, the sense of something regal in what's coming. To be loved more than anyone else has loved you is, in a way, to be treated as royalty, not in the sense of being served or worshipped, but in the sense of being held as genuinely precious, honored, treated with a care that acknowledges your worth. This person is going to treat you as someone valuable, someone to be cherished rather than taken for granted. And if you spent time being treated as ordinary, as replaceable, as someone whose presence wasn't particularly prized, the experience of being treated as precious will be a profound recalibration. You'll be reminded of a worth in yourself that harder times may have made you forget. And there's a reason a diamond belongs to this picture too, because a diamond is a thing formed under pressure and enduring beyond almost anything else. The love I sense isn't fragile. It's the kind that's been forged into strength, that can withstand the pressures, that shatter lesser bonds, that endures rather than crumbles when tested. Some loves are beautiful but brittle, lovely in the easy times and gone at the first real strain. This one has a durability to it, a resilience that comes from being built of solid stuff. To be loved more is also to be loved durably, by a love that holds. You won't have to fear that the first difficulty will end it, because what's coming is made to last, hardened rather than broken by the very pressures that reveal a love's true nature. I want to describe what you'll notice changing in yourself once you're inside a love like this, because being loved well transforms a person. Under the warmth of genuine, steady, seeing love, people tend to soften and bloom. Old defenses that you've needed for protection begin to feel unnecessary and start to fall away. You may find yourself becoming more open, more generous, more at ease, more yourself. There's a version of you that's been waiting for safe enough conditions to emerge, and this love provides those conditions. To be loved more is also to become more free, more relaxed, more fully the person you were always capable of being, underneath the armor that harder circumstances required. The love doesn't just feel good. It changes who you get to be. Something worth naming here, in the middle of all this, is that a love this complete is a two-way miracle, and Sarah Angel Tarot would want you to remember your half of it, because you won't only be the one receiving. You're gonna have the chance to love this person fully in return, to give the depth you've always had to give, but perhaps never found the right recipient for. Some of your frustration in past connections may have been the frustration of having so much love to offer and no one able to receive it properly. That too resolves here. You'll finally get to pour out what you've been holding into someone who can actually take it in and treasure it. The miracle flows in both directions, and being the giver of a great love is its own profound joy. Let me speak to the recognition you'll feel, because a love like this often announces itself through a particular sense of familiarity. When it arrives, part of you may feel that you already know this person, that some deep place in you recognizes them, even if your mind insists you've just met or are only now truly seeing them. That recognition is worth trusting. It's the feeling of encountering the thing your heart has been describing to itself all along, finally made real. Don't dismiss it as wishful thinking. The sense of homecoming, of finally finding the shape that fits the space you've been holding open, is one of the most reliable signals that you've found the real thing rather than another near miss. I want to gently address the doubt that may rise even now, because I know that after enough disappointments, hope can start to feel dangerous. You may be listening to all this with a protective skepticism, a part of you refusing to believe in case believing sets you up to be hurt again. I understand that instinct, and I won't ask you to abandon it entirely, but I'll invite you to loosen it just slightly, to allow the possibility that this time is genuinely different. The walls you built were reasonable responses to real pain, but walls that kept out the wrong loves can also keep out the right one. And the love approaching you is worth lowering a wall for. You don't have to tear them all down at once. Just leave a gap wide enough for something good to slip through. Let me name the timing quality I sense, without pointing to anything you could mark on a calendar, because the readiness matters more than the schedule. This isn't a distant, someday sort of thing. It has the feeling of something near, something that has moved from the realm of the possible into the realm of the imminent. The conditions have aligned. You've grown into readiness. This person has grown into readiness, and the space between you is thinning. What was once a far-off hope has become a close approach. So while I can't and won't hand you a specific moment, I can tell you the energy of it is present tense and warming, not cool and remote. It's the feeling of something almost here rather than something you can only long for from a distance. I want to reflect on the patience you've shown in waiting for this, because your waiting was not wasted time. Every disappointment refined your sense of what you actually want. Every connection that didn't work taught you something about yourself and about love. Every stretch of loneliness deepened your capacity to appreciate real companionship when it finally comes. You didn't waste those years by not yet having this. You were being prepared for it, sharpened and clarified and readied, so that when it arrives, you'll recognize it and know how to hold it well. The person you are now, shaped by everything you've been through, is exactly the person capable of receiving and sustaining the love that's coming. Nothing was wasted. It was all preparation. There's a specific fear I sense in you that I want to dissolve. The fear that you might somehow miss it, that the miracle could come and you'd fail to recognize it or mishandle it and let it slip away. Let me set that fear to rest. A love this aligned isn't so fragile that a single misstep destroys it, and you're not so oblivious that you'll fail to notice something this significant. Trust that when it comes, you'll know, and trust that it has enough substance to survive your nervousness, your imperfections, the clumsy first moments that every real beginning contains. You don't have to be flawless to receive this. You just have to be open. The miracle can handle your humanity. It was made for a real person, not a perfect one. And you are exactly the real person it's meant for. Let me describe the ease that will characterize this connection once it settles, because ease is one of its signatures. So much of what you may have known as love involved effort of the wrong kind. The effort of trying to be enough, of managing someone's moods, of working to earn affection that should have been freely given. This love asks a different kind of effort, the good kind. The effort of showing up and being present, but not the exhausting effort of trying to be someone you're not in order to be loved. With this person, you'll find that being yourself is enough, that the connection flows more naturally than you're used to, that you don't have to force or perform or strain. That naturalness, that sense of a thing working the way it's supposed to, is how you'll know you've arrived somewhere real. There's a warmth of simple presence I want to mention too, because so much of love is never spoken at all. It lives in the quiet of a shared space, the ease of a companionable silence, the settledness of knowing there's a person nearby whose nearness feels like home. What approaches you carries that grounded kind of warmth, the sort that makes a room feel safer just for their being in it, that turns ordinary time into something restful simply by being shared. After any stretch of feeling alone, even while in company, or of company that never quite let you exhale, the experience of a presence that genuinely soothes you will be among the sweetest parts of all of this. You'll notice that you feel more at home in your own life when this person is near, not because they complete you, but because their steady company makes the whole of your existence feel a little warmer and a little more held. I want to speak to how this love will hold your past, because I sense you may worry about the weight of your history. This person isn't looking for a version of you that arrives unmarked and uncomplicated. They want the whole of you, including the parts shaped by what hurt you, including the lessons written in your scars. Your history isn't a liability to be hidden from them. It's part of the story of how you became someone worth loving this deeply. And rather than holding your past against you, this person will honor it as the road that led you to them. You won't have to pretend to be untouched by life. You'll get to be fully yourself, history and all, and find that the whole of you is exactly what's wanted. Let me touch on the freedom this love will give rather than take, because possessive love masquerades as devotion, and I want you to know the difference. Some loves try to shrink your world, to isolate you, to make you smaller so you're easier to keep. That's not love, however intense it feels. The love I sense expands you instead. It wants you to flourish, encourages your growth, celebrates your independence rather than fearing it, To be loved more is to be loved freely, by someone secure enough to want your fullness rather than your diminishment. You won't have to trade your freedom for this affection. You'll find instead that being loved this way makes you freer, more able to become everything you're capable of being, supported rather than constrained. There's a mutual growth I sense in this connection, a sense that the two of you will make each other better rather than smaller. The best loves aren't static, they're generative. Each person becomes more of themselves through the other, drawing out qualities that were latent, encouraging dreams that were dormant, providing the safety in which growth becomes possible. What approaches you isn't a love that asks you to stay the same forever, but one that grows alongside you, that supports your becoming, and is glad to become in turn. To be loved more is to be loved in a way that helps you grow by someone who grows with you. And a love that evolves is a love that lasts because it never becomes stale or confining. There's a readiness to commit in this person that will feel like solid ground after any experience of uncertainty. Some people love you while keeping the exits in view, unwilling to fully arrive, always leaving themselves a way out. This person isn't hedging. What I sense is a willingness to choose you fully and to keep on choosing you, to build towards something rather than merely enjoy a present with no intention behind it. After any time spent with someone who kept one foot out the door, the experience of being with a person who steps all the way in, both feet, without needing to be convinced, will feel like the arrival of something you can actually build a life upon. Not a fragile maybe, but a foundation. As we begin to bring our time together toward its close, let me gather what we've uncovered into a single clear shape. The miracle approaching you isn't a violation of reality. It's the arrival of a love you'd stop believing you'd find. And the more than anyone else isn't about volume or drama. It's about depth, constancy, being truly seen and understood and accepted, being prioritized and kept safe, being loved through action and delighted in, treated as precious, and held by something durable enough to last. All of these dimensions of more are converging into a single love, making its way towards you, and into a version of you finally ready to receive it. What Sarah Angel Tarot would leave in your hands, above everything else, is this quiet instruction. Expect it, in the soft and open way we spoke of at the beginning. Not with clenched demand, but with the light left burning in the window. Keep your heart a little more open than fear would prefer. Trust the recognition when it comes. Let yourself believe, even against the evidence of past disappointments, that this kind of love is genuinely meant for you and genuinely on its way. Your expectancy is not naive. It's the very thing that keeps the door open for the miracle to walk through. And so I'll leave you gently now. The way you'd place a crown you've been keeping safe onto the head of someone who forgot it was theirs all along. You have spent enough of your life being loved less than you deserved, offering more than you received, wondering whether the real thing would ever find you. That season is ending. What approaches is a love that will finally match the size of your own heart. A person who will treasure you the way you've always quietly hoped to be treasured. A connection precious and enduring and true. Expect the miracle. Keep the light on. It's coming towards you and it's yours and it was always meant to be.